Approximately 81 years ago, on this day, May 9th, 1945, the deadliest conflict ever to appear in human history ended. World War II. It's been estimated that around 70 to 85 million people died in these 5 years of war, out of which approximately 55 million were civilians. It is May 9th today, and it is officially celebrated here in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe. It's known as the end of the Second World War. It officially ended on September 2nd after Japan surrendered, but here in Europe, this is the time that it ended. Never forget. Take a few moments out of your day if you can, and you can. Take a few moments out of your day to just remember the horrible, horrible things that have happened in those 5 years, 81 years ago. Remember the great acts of heroism and courage and humanity that some people, still in the middle of madness, in the middle of this chaos, it's unimaginable. They still managed to possess it, and they still managed to maintain their humanity. Remember the horrible atrocities that were committed upon people who never deserved it. Remember the ways that ideals and political movements and all of these different idealist perspectives on the world managed to bring Europe on its knees, Asia, Africa. Never forget. Never forget that because of these ideals, which were taken to the extreme by people who were very charismatic, who knew very well what they wanted and how to get there, who managed to influence countries, entire countries, and bring them to fight other countries and kill and maim and murder and torture and burn alive and carbonize other human beings. Never forget the suffering and pain that was inflicted, and never forget that it is part of every single one of us. The events of World War II have been acted in and have been orchestrated by people no different than us. You might call them psychopaths, you might call them whatever other kinds of names, but in the end, most of these people, they were human beings. They were just simple human beings who, just because they had a lapse of judgment, which can happen to any one of us, they managed to take part in the biggest crime of humanity. Remember that what they did is part of us. It's part of who we are. It's part of human nature. by God, it's something that can very well happen again in even worse ways, in even more dangerous and miserable and terrifying ways. Remember that if we don't pay attention to what we do, how we think, how we act, and how we choose to act, we can bring this upon ourselves once again, possibly so many times worse. And also remember that your inaction is also what leads to this. Remember that by not acting and setting an example for yourself and the people around you of what a real person should be, a real woman, a real man, a real human being should be, by you subtracting yourself from that responsibility, that fundamental human responsibility, take care of yourself and to take care of the ones you love, and to take care of every single human being out there who deserves love and who deserves respect and basic human rights. By subtracting yourself from that responsibility, you are also helping lead to something far, far worse than what happened 81 years ago today. By not taking a side, by stepping back, by saying, I'm not involved in this, I don't care. By saying, you know what? Yeah, politics isn't really my thing, so I'm never gonna think about it. I'm never gonna even try to imagine why the things that happened from 1939 to 1945 took the lives of so many, and why was such a pivotal moment for society, for human society. When you say that, you bring yourself in the same spot as those people, and all of those totalitarian regimes back then, who just said the same thing. It's not my problem, I don't care. And they indirectly led to the loss of about 3% of the world's population at that time. 3%. Your inaction is speaking volumes. Your inaction will have consequences. So make sure that you actively strive to know who you are, to know yourself very well, to know the people around you, and to behave like a noble person. Behave like a noble human being. And stand up for yourself and stand up for what is right. Never, and I mean never, let that slip away from you. Because the second you let that slip away, the Holocaust happens. The second you let that slip away, 20 million civilians die in China. The second you let that slip away, millions and millions of soldiers die. Probably double the number, not even half of the number of civilians. This is exactly the way that people back then fought. And this is exactly how they acted in their everyday lives, pretending like they don't care, pretending like it's something that they don't really need to think about, pretending that it's not their problem. And then in the end, they let themselves unknowingly be influenced into supporting one of the most treacherous crimes and murders in human history. Watch yourself. Watch what you do. Watch what you say. Watch how you act. Watch how you don't act. Watch yourself. and make sure that everything that you do is in the good name, is in the good spirit of humanity. Everything you do is with respect to those around you. Everything you do must be noble. Because the second we let that slip away again, May 9th will be just another day that we'll forget, and there will be a new day. At some point eventually, if maybe anybody will be able to remember it. A new day which will mark the end of the Third World War. But the problem is, we don't know if there will be anyone to remember that date. So that is why we have to be careful. That is why we have to be very aware of who we are and what we're capable of as human beings. Because what those people did back then, as horrible and as crazy as it sounds, and no matter how convinced you might be that you would never do that. You would never, ever do that. Those people back then, they thought the same thing. Most of people who were not psychopaths, they thought exactly the same thing. But yet most of them did that. Most of them contributed to that huge river of blood that flowed over the entire world. Every single one of those people contributed to it, one way or another. And the question is, do you really think that we're not like them? Look back to that time and look back on the prison again, and you'll see so many similarities in the way that we act, in the way that we think, in the way that the countries are run, in the way that politics is being made, in the way that things are evolving every day. Lots of those things are exactly the same, if not very, very identical. That's actually the same thing, actually. Overall, very similar. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. We are, every single one of us, I am capable of doing what those people did back then. I'm capable of killing, I'm capable of murdering, I'm capable of raping and pillaging and burning villages down and destroying entire communities. I personally am capable of doing that, and so are you. You might think, no. Who do you take me for? Do you take me for some crazy animal? Yes. Yes. Yes and no, actually, because we're not crazy animals, but we're human beings. And we are exactly the same in a psychological point of view, biological point of view, as those people back then were. Almost nothing changed. And that is why we have to be very careful. And all in all, actually, sadly, this is part of human nature. What we have done to ourselves 81 years ago, what we have done all across history, it is just part of our human nature. It is something that we do, whether we choose to enjoy it or not. It is part of who we are. War is part of who we are. But we have to make sure that it is not ignored, that it is not taken for as something light, that it is not glorified, and that it is not desired. Watch yourself. Watch the people around you. And make sure to never, ever forget. Never forget that day, May 9th. because it is the day that hell stopped. It ended in Europe. And sadly, that hell it just moved to other places all across the world, all the way until the present moment, in just different ways. And we will not be able to remember all the dates, but this one at least, the date that the biggest and most treacherous crime of all time has been stopped. Remember that day. Remember with respect the people who fought for the better of the world. The people who were on the other side who said, you know what, no. If not us, then who? Who will face this? Before we turn into slaves, before we get killed ourselves, before our families get killed, before we lose who we are completely. We have to do something, and they did. They fought, they died, they bled, with brothers among them, so that we here today can be as we are, for good and for worse. But remember the good, because the good in this case is far more important than the worse. Never forget. Try to imagine for a second the world back then, the way people had to live. They had to fight every single day for survival. Not comfort, not pleasure, survival. Remember that and make sure to never, ever fucking repeat it again. Not with your actions and not with your inactions. Those two things are connected, they're intertwined, they're in tandem. Watch yourself and never forget. Happy May 9th. Happy end of World War II.